President Trump's second term just unveiled a fucking hell of a gem. The NSPM-7. That's a national security presidential memorandum on countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Translation: it's a nationwide crackdown memo. The White House claims assassins are lurking everywhere, whispering in the dark, and only Trump's dream team, people like Crazy Eyes Patel, PD3 Sheets Hegseth, Capital Caroline, and Insta's canine killer Gnome, can save America. They talk about heinous assassination from Kirk's murder to the attempts on judges to riots in Portland and LA. All evidence, they say, of an organized domestic terror network funding paid actors on the ground. You'll hear our opponents claim that this is simply about keeping us safe. You may even hear them argue that political violence being on the rise is grounds for such draconian measures. But history teaches that every repressive measure comes wrapped in that same justification. Safety is the mask, suppression is the reality, and Benjamin Franklin said it better than I could. And those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. According to the memo, these are no random acts. There are no random acts, but a grand anti-fascist conspiracy fueled by anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, and a thirst to overthrow the United States government. Their solution? Turn every arm of the federal government, the FBI, the Treasury Department, the IRS, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, loose on any dissident who might even think about labeling their policy changes as fascist or authoritarian. They want to dismantle what they call networks, organizations, and funding sources behind this fake rebellion from an organization that isn't. I mean, seriously, it doesn't exist. I mean, what is it? Because George Soros, gay frogs, or Satanism, the bad kind, I guess, that they think that this is a thing that exists? I am an anti-fascist. I'm a communist. Where are my Antifa checks if there's an organization, huh? In short, the official line is there is chaos on our streets, and only we can fix it by hunting dissidents and terrorists in your cities and in your homes. But let's peel back the curtain a little bit. This, my friends, is a masterclass at authoritarian gaslighting. The majority of Democrats who are supposed to be protecting us from shit like this, feckless crickets is all I hear from them so far, so let me get into it for you since they're too big of fucking cowards to do so. The memo's language is intentionally vague and sweeping. Domestic terrorism, organized political violence, terroristic conspiracies. None of these terms have single clear definitions. Ask a dozen lawyers what they mean and you'll get about 3 dozen different answers, and maybe one of them will be right. In practice, this means any protester with a bullhorn could potentially suddenly be recast as a terrorist organizer. A college student mailing postcards asking for money to fund a immigrant, student group, they could be labeled a funder of terrorism. A campus protest about police brutality, an insurrection against government and against law enforcement. The memo even directs Joint Terrorism Task Force units to interrogate before any trial anyone involved in lawlessness, about who paid for it, who ran it, and who supported it. In other words, you could attend a rally or sign a petition, and the FBI can ring you up and say who gave you the money, who's your boss, regardless of whether there was even a crime that occurred, anyone was charged, or anyone was convicted. This is literally, they can essentially profile you based on this association. Gotta love that freedom of association we've protected for 250 years, but no, regardless of whether any crime has actually happened yet, hell, even if you're just walking by minding your own business when a protest is occurring, they can grab you. Did you catch that? Even banks and charities are on notice. The Treasury is now tasked with hunting down illicit funding streams and telling banks to file suspicious activity reports on anything that looks like a donation to political causes. So, if your local food bank ever helps undocumented immigrants, guess what? Report it as a possible domestic terror financing. If an environmental group gets a grant from abroad, suddenly it's a foreign conspiracy under the FARA-style scrutiny. The memo actually calls for turning the IRS and FARA tools, laws meant for foreign spies, onto American nonprofits. Remember that think tank that publishes a dissenting report on governmental policy? Under NSPM 7, its donors might find themselves labeled unregistered foreign agents. The goal is explicit: make funding dissent so dangerous and so costly that people stop doing it altogether. Now let's talk context. Notice what isn't in this memo when you go and read it. Despite trumpeting political violence, not a single one of these new directives actually goes after the most obvious threats: white supremacist militias, Christian nationalists, neo-Nazis, and there's a few others. But the very groups drowning America in hate right now today, the ones that are calling for the purging of anyone left of Reagan's corpse. Not a word about Patriot Front splattering swastikas on bridges, or silver bullet-wielding psycho militia ambushing cops, or Klan beatings of Black and Jewish Americans in the South since Charlie Kirk's murder. Instead, they put anti-fascist activists. You know, the ones who dress in all black and paint "No Nazis" on walls and crosshairs? Charlie Kirk's murderer gets put and made into a left-wing caricature. The violent riots in Portland become a pretext for going after librarians and PETA donors. That's not coincidence. It's by design. This administration is going after dissenters that draw the ire of the tangerine tyrant. This administration's law enforcement shift isn't about stopping real violence, it's about silencing ideological opposition. And our opposition party, the Democrats, are a bunch of feckless corporatist dipshits with only a couple standing out from the pack. The memoir of this memo reads like a paranoid fever dream. It lists dog whistles like support for law enforcement and border control is seen as fascist, anger towards traditional views on religion, and anti-Christian. In short, if you ever criticized the gun worship or said healthcare should be a right, you're under suspicion for fomenting an anti-Christian, anti-fascist, anti-capitalist lie. Imagine that progressive values spelled out as the cause of terrorism. It's Orwellian, but even George couldn't have seen this fucking coming. Newspeak doesn't have language ready for this. Not even in double plus good language could I form a sentence that would actually express how terrifying this is. They've weaponized language so thoroughly that the phrase protecting democracy now means probing every opposition group's bank records. If you're a teacher talking about racism in the past, or a pastor speaking for immigrants citing the scriptures within the New Testament, those could be relabeled as radicalizations to violence. The memo explicitly says anyone who educates or organizes in forums, chat rooms, meetings, or educational institutions as a part of an organized campaign of intimidation in forums, chat rooms, meetings, or educational institutions is part of an organized campaign of intimidation. I'm not going to repeat it again, but really let that sink in. That could describe an Antifa chat group or a PTA meeting about immigration policy within schools and whether or not the security guard should help ICE. The memo doesn't care about clarity. It cares about power, and it cares about fear. And let's not pretend this is kosher under our system. This executive overreach is on steroids. Trump didn't run this by Congress. He didn't even run this by a majority of his cabinet. He wrote an internal directive, grabbed every agency, and said, execute. Now, I know who actually wrote this is more than likely Stephen Miller, Trump isn't articulate enough to have written this particular memo. However, he is the one saying, execute. There's no vote, there's no debate, no judges involved. It's a wartime order in peacetime America. The moment you start arresting people for their beliefs without law, without any without any law being broken, it's a tiny step from an executive memo to martial law. Think about it. The Reichstag fire decree in 1933 was also an emergency measure after a supposed terrorist attack. And Hindenburg used it to suspend all rights. Overnight, free speech, free assembly, even habeas corpus disappeared. History books make a big deal of that. Why? Because it's the same playbook. Today's memo packs enough power to chill speech itself. It tries to make advocacy feel criminal and make you want to report your neighbors for fear that you will be seen as aiding and abetting if you don't. If you're still thinking, this can't happen here, guess again. The FBI's own files, yes, our own government files that you can get yourself via FOIA requests, show J. Edgar Hoover ran something called COINTELPRO, or Counterintelligence Program, for 15 years, explicitly to disrupt civil rights and anti-war activists. That means spying on Martin Luther King Jr., infiltrating Black Panther meetings, and sending anonymous letters to break up marriages of prominent political figures, all under the cloak of national security. It was finally shut down for being illegal and unconstitutional. I forget the exact year. NSPM 7 is basically COINTELPRO 2.0, polished for the social media age. Suddenly, anyone who tweets defund the police can be tagged as a domestic terrorist on some watch list by the NSA. If you doubt it, recall the post-9/11 Patriot Act fervor, which made showing dissent synonymous with being dangerous or supporting the attack by the people that flew planes into buildings. They promised it would only target bona fide terrorists, yet it became a yawning hole swallowing privacy and protest rights. NSPM 7 is the next iteration. Not a myth, it's a new legal weapon pointed squarely at the dissent, which is people like me on the left. Oh, and let's not forget the press. Journalists asking those tough questions. Conservatives have long called them the enemies within. Now the state tacitly agrees. Expose their funding streams. Investigate those who sponsor media organizations as if reporting the news were a criminal conspiracy. Want to see if self-censorship blooms? Well, you already see quite a bit of that where people will say on alive instead of kill or murder or suicide. You will see them say PD3 files because they don't want to say pedophile for fear of being demonetized. Just tell newsrooms their donors might be the next suspects and watch how quickly they self-censor. The same goes for non-governmental organizations, unions, civil society groups, all under surveillance. Imagine your local nonprofit trying to help immigrants. If it has any international partners or activist funders, it falls under the FARA scrutiny and money laundering allegations. That's what NSPM 7 does. It tells government watchdogs to interrogate... Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. It tells the government watchdogs to interrogate the life out of every nonprofit's bank statements, their phone records, anything they can get their grubby little fucking mitts on. Make activism so legally fraught, so terrifying, smaller groups can't afford to even form, because the sheer fear of joining a group could get you labeled a terrorist and thrown you in Guantanamo Bay, or worse. And that's not me being alarmist. We had American citizens in black site prisons. We held them without trial. We held them without cause. And in many cases found years later that they were completely innocent, and it was based on an unfounded profiling speculation that landed them there. There's not as many as foreign nationals that this happened to, but one is too fucking many. And that was under a president who wasn't a megalomaniacal asshole who has delusions of grandeur and is fixated on his legacy because he's afraid he's going to die because of how fucking old he is. Let's be crystal clear. This is not a blunder or a one-off strategy. They literally wrote the war on dissent into a memorandum, and this is just an extension of Project 2025 and other such documents you have heard me mention and other news media mention. The purpose, as a constitutional scholars are already pointing out, is to give law enforcement a green light to monitor, investigate, and take action based on political beliefs. Well, we have a militarized police force, and if you happen to watch Three Sheets Hegseth's fucking speech to the generals the other day, you can see the implications of that as well. If you think that's hyperbole, read what experts said the morning after the memo dropped. It'll be a little hard to find because most journalists aren't covering it, but there are several experts: counterterrorism, fascism, authoritarian dictator expert. Basically, all the poli-sci nerds that go, well, actually, yeah, those motherfuckers. This isn't mere overreach, it's political suppression. One analyst summed it up. Another pointed out the naked intentionality. Redirects the Joint Terrorism Task Force from Trumpist militias, where they had been, to charity funding networks of the left. This directive even tells police to haul in people before they're even truly suspected of a crime and grill them about who gave them money that they don't even have evidence exists. It is guilt by association writ large. History teaches us why this is dangerous. After 9/11, we were told to choose security over freedom. That gave us secret prisons, bulk surveillance, number stations, what was it, Project Echelon. It didn't make us safer. It terrorized normal citizens. It put our phone calls and our text messages in databases. Similarly, when a leader demonizes an entire ideology, calling us vermin and terrorists and fascists, it paves the way for brutality. Hitlers and Stalins learned the hard way. Define dissent as treason, and suddenly the Gestapo and the People's Commissariat of Fear are your best fucking friends. Nazi Germany's first move after the Reichstag fire: blame the communists. Of course, blame the communists. Why not? They always do. Then sign a decree suspending free speech, assembly, even the right to trial. That single act outlawed all opposition, turning a democracy into a dictatorship practically overnight. In practicality, more than likely about a month. Penned for our protection, it ended up protecting only the powerful and oppressing everyone else. And not long after, the regime moved against anyone they deemed unfit. They passed laws that legalized sterilization of disabled people of other ethnicities and paved the way for the murder of the differently abled in ways that I will not even try to describe here. COINTELPRO, Reichstag, these aren't abstract governmental actions. They're warnings. Trump's NSPM-7 resurrects both. The Reichstag fire of our age is whatever attack he points to on the day and claims is by the radical left. And with a stroke of a pen, it removes our guarantees. I ask you, is it too paranoid to notice these parallels? Well, no, it's not. I know the answer to the question. Consider this. If delivering a speech becomes domestic terrorism, then professors will shut up. Journalists will rewrite from official scripts. And activists will quietly fold or be put in prison and never seen again. Precisely as the memo's critics have warned, the only safe dissent will be none at all, or what several leftist thought leaders would call controlled opposition. And who does this truly help? If its professed goal is to stop real terror, the strategy is bonkers. The Southern Poverty Law Center logged over 1,300 hate groups active as of recently. FBI warns of militia abductions. Hate crimes are spiking against Jewish and people of color. But this memo treats victims of racism and homophobia as the bad guys. It treats criticism of police brutality as terrorism. Meanwhile, violent neo-Nazis can keep their GoPro cameras. They're not the anti-fascists after all. It's like you're setting a broken leg on fire to cure the flu. And I know that metaphor may feel a little forced, but no, it is that insane. It is setting your broken leg on fire to cure a flu. It will not do what it claims it wants to do. It will only do what the experts are explaining: cause oppression and silence dissent. The letter of the NSPM 7 hides the game. Expand the law enforcement everywhere. Take aim at anyone liberal, ethnic, or anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist, or hell, even atheist at this fucking point. It's not about safety. It's about intimidation. It's about fear. So here's the bottom line. The NSPM 7 reads like a war plan on an entire swath of the American populace. If civil liberties have any defenders left, this should be the rallying cry. Because if they get away with it, imagine the future. Riot squads at churches that oppose policy. Banks policing your spending if you donate to dissenters. Lawyers and professors subpoenaed for having the wrong book club. We've seen this domino fall before. The former head of the House Judiciary Committee warned that asking banks to filter MAGA transaction already turning Americans into suspect without just cause. Now imagine this NSPM 7 is the next bigger leap, because it doesn't just look at banks to filter. It asks them to report. It asks them to actually report it as suspicious to a crime. Look, I'm not here to just stoke fear, although I'm sure if you believe me at all, I'm stoking quite a bit of fear. I'm shouting, wake the fuck up. We are at a turning point. No pun intended. If this memorandum isn't reined in immediately by the courts and Congress, if feckless fucking liberals and Democrats don't call it out for what it is, then freedom will really be at stake. Because no law is ironclad if the executive can redefine who falls under it. The founders literally fought a revolution so we wouldn't end up like this, ruled by a king, police on every corner, policing our thoughts, and journalists in the dock. This isn't a rehearsal for your worst nightmare. It's the opening act. When they say counterterrorism, remember who's writing the script. A man who's already said he never loses faith in violence when it suits his goals. And notice how they pick out vulnerable groups: the media, black organizer, academic dissidents, any group with a name ending in an ism or an ist that's not a chicken little rhetoric. It's the very strategy of despots. It's what we should all have swallowed a big-ass glass of and spat out long ago. Here's my warning. If this keeps rolling, if we sit back and whisper our objections at night while law enforcers write us off, our country is going to change forever, and we will not have any recourse to fucking change it back. We will see more lynch naming in memoirs, more civil suits, and slowly, imperceptibly, we'll watch our rights get whittled away and slowly vanish. The First Amendment, which once felt impregnable, will start to feel like an option granted by the state, not a birthright. The only way out is to be loudly, even raucously committed to our liberties before they are clamped down for national security. Because if we don't act now, if lawyers, if citizens, if journalists, if reporters, and if goddamn politicians don't challenge this in every forum available, the question will become very quickly, have we earned the tyranny we're about to get? I, for one, have no intention of finding out the hard way. And trust me, the ones pushing this memo know exactly what they're fucking doing. The Heritage Foundation gave them a roadmap. This isn't accidental. This isn't an oversight. It is a straight up assault on dissent. It is a straight up fucking assault on democracy. And it is a straight up assault on the very idea that you have a say in running your own fucking life. Mark my words, tomorrow's history will not look kindly on those who let this pass. They will look on it as unkindly as those who fought to keep those Civil War fucking traitor statues up, and those who voted to have a national holiday for a fucking Christian nationalist. The time to speak up was yesterday, but today will do. Tomorrow will do. Get on it now. Call your politicians. But if you haven't shouted it yet, shout it now. If you haven't emailed it yet, email it now. Otherwise, checkmate is just around the corner. This is a zugzwang move. The gloves are off and they're pointing those fists at us. And so are the rationalizations, because it has nothing to do with whether or not we are violent, advocate for violence, or just advocate for a better fucking world for everyone. The war on domestic terror is really a war on ideas. It's a war on morality. And if we go quietly, we might as well stick our head between our knees. And well, you know the rest. Hi, I'm Jack, and come back to us next time on Fova News and follow us on Substack and click the little bell down below. It helps a small channel like us out immensely. Thank you for coming.